allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think we have one agenda item today, and an important one. It's the Ethics Code update. We revised the Ethics Board. When we looked at it, it was woefully inadequate, the code itself. So Duff, you're the lucky person to be appointed chairman, and you want to walk us through it today?
I sure do. Thanks, David. And thanks for your support for this. My board and I have worked on this for about a year. We have this much stuff and then some, and it's been very helpful to have, the encouragement of the town board to update what is a very lacking ethics code. Our basic thrust has been to have a reasonable one that emphasizes education and prevention, not just punishment. When you look at who it may actually apply to, not that many people. Tell the truth, and Christina's pointed out there's 9 elected officials, about 60 full-time employees, 100 or so committee and board members that are covered, another 60 or 70 part-time people or volunteers.
It's not that many. It's like 25% of the population. It's on this list.
So
There's 10 electeds, I think.
yeah. So I'm just going to run down an overview and then section by section, look if you have a chance to look it over our recommendation. About a few weeks ago, we finally agreed on a recommendation that's our best recommendation. And I think what is important here is the kind of quality and integrity of the ethics board members. You know about me, and you met Laura, who was the last person to be appointed in here. And then besides that, there's Deborah Grayson, who's an expert on bioethics. There's Bob Raber, who's dental ethics, and Shelby. Is she back at work yet?
Not yet.
Well, and she's
May.
so she's great. And with Christina and Stephen and Shelby, we get a good, realistic look inside the town as well.
And Shelby's role is representing the town employees.
Yes, right. At least one of the 5 members is supposed to be a town employee in most towns. So I don't need to trash the old ethics code. No, just move into the new one.
Yes, that's my plan. There's not much there, so skip it.
What we have done is, a plain English guide that I think you've seen to attempt to demystify this 9 pages. And I've done recently, just recently, a flow chart of our work. And this to me is it's a telling part, because it goes, what we have now is employee request for confidential advice. It goes through us, and we do a good job. I can't show you these opinions because of all the confidentiality, right? But I'll give you an example of one that we did, because this isn't giving anything away. This is 3-page opinion. It's a real one that we did.
Right.
And we analyze these cases. We look at the question presented, the facts, the relevant laws, analysis. So we analyze the facts against the laws or standards, and then have a finding or conclusion. So we've taken this work very seriously, and that's what we would continue to do. But instead of only doing confidential advisory opinions that remain secret, we would like to allow public complaints or board action on its own that has the same standards of investigation. And then if there is a significant conflict that we find, that would go to y'all. and you could decide whether to make anything public or not, or whether there's any disciplinary action warranted or not. That's the significant one. If there is no significant conflict on a complaint like that, then it's dismissed and the employees advise. So it's that to me is the most important, change in the.
Can you explain the rationale for even for the dismissed ones not going to the town board? Just because if it's made by public.
Yeah. We just discussed this whole chain of events in our last meeting or two, and I personally would be, it's up to you. I'd be happy for them to come to you because it is a public complaint, and the answer goes back to the complainant as well as the employee. You would want to keep it private probably because it's, impugns the person that was wrongly accused, basically, right?
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking in terms of if it's publicly brought and we're aware of it and it gets dismissed, just to understand why it wasn't,
Yeah.
or didn't rise to the level of being a conflict.
Absolutely, yeah. And the outcome of most of these, I want to start, and is in the proposed code, a 1 line or 2 lines summary of the case and the finding that shields all the identities, so that it advises other employees, because that's the point, and you, but it would be good to have the benefit of our analysis, I think, on dismissed complaints as well.
Yeah, that would be beneficial.
Yeah.
Because, sometimes it comes back and someone will bring it up in a public forum and we can say that was dismissed, the ethics board looked into it, but then at least we know it was dismissed.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then we can,
Yeah, exactly. So these, when it says public complaint, that's not necessarily a complaint out there in the public.
Right.
It's a member of the public can bring it to us. Yeah.
Yeah, section 8020C is written broad enough, so it can include dismissed complaints as well. Be forwarded to you.
Good.
And I'm just staying on the flow chart for a second. It's employee requests. I'm supposing that's the employee themselves asking about a potential conflict they may have. And then it's the public or a board member, or town board. But can an employee not even allege, just request? Like, I have my fellow employee over here and I'm just wondering, is that a conflict? Not alleging anything or, it's, something that could be nagging at you. Does that fit into the flow chart? Is that allowed?
Yes, it's under 818D2. It's in the event any person believes in good faith that a town employee or officer. So any person is broad enough that it includes an employee.
Okay. All right.
All right, so,
So are we gonna go through this? I
yeah,
have a question that relates to this, but it's in here.
in the sequence of the thing.
Yeah.
You want to start from the beginning?
Let's start from the beginning.
Yeah, I was going to go from the beginning too. So the preamble, redrafted by Laura, it's wonderful and good. The definitions, we get into interest in the contract. And state law requires a lot of this stuff.
Actually, before you go, Bud,
Yeah.
I had a couple of questions on page 1.
Uh-huh.
Halfway down the page, a little bit better, halfway down the page under 805, also prohibits town employees from disclosing confidential information acquired in connection with your town employment. So executive work sessions, things that are done in executive work sessions, if somebody violates that, does that go to committees? Does that go to the town board? People that take things out of executive session and share them with people that should not, this information should not be shared with?
Yeah, there's a general prohibition on, if you go to 8-15 on confidential information, that you shall not use or disclose confidential information. So if something gets out of an executive session and it's made public or used by others, then I guess a complaint can be made and the Board of Ethics will look into it.
That's something, that's a point of interest, I think, moving forward, that we have to address, not just on the town board, but also in executive sessions and meetings, committee meetings as well. I think it's just a point of emphasis that a lot of people sold on the importance of that.
And it's also referenced in another section of the code where you can't use confidential information for your benefit.
Correct.
So, but again, 8-15 is the broad prohibition on the use and or disclosure of confidential information.
So I'm assuming that we're going to have some type of annual training. Be recommended that we have, again, I don't think it'll be an 8-hour block. I think a nice hour, hour and a half, 2-hour annual training, just as a reminder. I would love to see the training changed every year, a little bit different, so that people are not being exposed to exactly the same material. I also would love to think that, when you talked about prevention and education, that some of the best stuff with ethics is creating situational cards so that you actually, make up some names, you make up some situations, you get groups of people in a room.
Yeah.
You have 3 groups of 4, let's say, group 1, 2, and 3. You pose them with something, they talk about it amongst themselves.
Yeah.
They make a presentation on some, and then you critique it.
Right.
It's a little bit more active learning. Like I thought one of the best parts of our training from several years ago was when we actually got to answer and address the stuff that was up on the screen.
Yeah.
And then in the afternoon, it got a little bit drawn out. It was just, I think when you're just sitting in a classroom, so to speak,
Yeah.
taking notes,
Like
it's not the
reading this, that really does.
correct. Yeah, you actually have to get in, and they can change every year. They're very interesting. They're good perspectives. They're great learning tools, and it gets the students actively involved in
Absolutely.
the discussions.
To look at hypotheticals.
Yeah. When you get at the very bottom of the first page down there, you talk about potential, a third line from the bottom, potential ethical issues beyond those included in Article 18.
Yeah.
Could we cite some examples? If we're getting into training, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
what's not covered? What are potential ethical issues?
What is covered is all the things that are
Okay,
annotated.
yes.
Got the annotated
I
version?
do have
Yeah,
the answer.
okay.
This is what I read
All
before.
right, okay,
Which is most of it.
okay,
It's actually required by state law, but has not been.
okay. Got it. All right.
So what's totally optional isn't really much in here. There's like 8-12 is use of town resources. Now, that's not required in state law, but it is already in the employee handbook. And we're trying to make this ethics code, cover most of those situations in the employee handbook as well as the state.
Yeah, Article 18, and we've heard of that, it's Durham Municipal Law, Article 18, that's the floor of ethics, that's the bare minimum. And then the Article 18 authorizes the town to adopt an ethics code, actually mandates it, and you can make it more stringent than that ceiling and make it more robust. And that's what this is trying to achieve.
Right. So what the footnotes or the annotation shows is all those sections are required by state law.
Right.
And that's almost all of the standards that are in this.
Yeah.
We're just trying to make them clear. Right?
Yeah, and I just want to throw out for 8.1, the purpose. As we've talked about from the outset, and this board is, Board of Ethics, is taking it very serious, that obviously real conflicts must be rooted out, but without condemning the inconsequential ones. So that there are going to be some conflicts of interest, and you have to just deal with them. But if they're not significant, you can live with them. Because, again, we're a small island.
Right. So the major purpose of the state law that we're going to start following, hopefully, is to prevent people from having conflicting interests in contracts and spending. It was all started back in the 70s, I think, after Tammany Hall, and to prevent people from having undisclosed spending. So the key thing in here is what is an interest in a contract? That's the definitions. Interest in a contract, well, we'll come to that in a few sections. Interest in a private organization, if you're own a company, it could have an interest in a contract, for instance. Who is an officer and employee, I think, is the same as the current code. It's anybody, including volunteers like me.
For the definitions, the first one, board.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you made it a board, committee, or other agency or body comprised of 2 or more town officers, because we do have a few 3-person kind of committees and boards, instead of making it like 3, when that would be the quorum for a 5-person.
I don't know, do we have any, all the boards have at least 2 people, right?
Well, at the minimum, they would have to have.
We're not talking about a meeting, we're talking about the actual board.
Yeah, the board. Who is the board? Like,
Right, oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
cover any and all, got you.
Correct.
Yeah,
If anything's created in the future,
right,
obviously, it's bad practice to have an even number.
yeah. Well, because I was thinking 3 is usually the smallest we would have, so
Exactly.
2 counts for the quorum of that committee. Okay.
And the financial benefit can be indirect. And I did work a lot on this little chart of who is a relative. And it's a very helpful chart in trying to parse this, right? Where we're talking about with an interest in legislation or discretionary acts, like let's say discretionary permits. There's a fair set of relatives that are included. Not as many as other places have. It's about as limited as we could make it, but there's more than a few. Interest in contracts and spending. This is the bare minimum under state law. Employee, spouse, minor child, and dependents. There are some towns that also have adult children included in there. We have it in our recommendations. So for instance, you could give a contract to your son if he owned a, paving business out there. Some towns don't want to allow that because it's a small island, at least at the board level. Now, y'all could decide to expand that further. This is the bare minimum under state law for interest in contracts. Acquiring investments in conflict with official duties. Our recommendation is at this point that only applies to the employee. And you all could expand that if you want to their spouse, for instance. Some places do have it on the spouse. So I think what this proposal and the state law have, and Stephen can correct me on this, is when you come into office, even if you own a conflicting investment, you're allowed to keep it. But you're not supposed to get a new conflicting investment in your
Right.
office.
Right,
Meanwhile, your spouse can even get new conflicting investments.
right.
So it's as well as your kids can. So it's right.
Yeah, and again, the board is trying to put this law into Shelter Island's context. And also, because again, you don't want everybody to be conflicted out, so then you can't fill your boards, your committees, people not running for office so we start here, and this is the bare minimum, and then if there are problems in the future, you can always amend it to add spouse.
Yeah.
And this chart is very helpful because there's different substantive sections of this code, and there's different definitions of what is a relative based on which section of the code you're in. So that's why there's not just one plain definition. So, and this is very good. Up to the great job.
I always try to spread things out in the spreadsheet.
Meg, I think she
I
appreciates.
appreciate it.
Particularly the flow charts. She's-
Spreadsheets and flowcharts.
Totally into that. Yeah, if you look on the same chart at the nepotism policy that you have for the town, that has more people.
Yes.
It's got a bunch of in-laws. If we look at the controller's model code, that's got a lot more people.
Everybody.
And the land use disclosures has some more people. So the first 3 columns, though, are what is in this proposal, and you can see some of the differences, and there's a reason for each one.
Right.
So that's indirect financial benefit is what that pertains to. And then We can go a little further into it. Let's get into disclosure of interest in legislation. 8-5. As I did do a flow chart for you on this. And I think, and even again, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but this requires this, if you have a personal or indirect financial interest in the first column of the spreadsheet, and legislation or a discretionary act, like somebody that issues, I don't know, a wetlands permit or something that's discretionary,
Right.
then you're supposed to disclose it and recuse and abstain from that.
Let me go one step further.
Yeah.
That at your last meeting, it was brought up that I should be investigated because we raised the fee for landfill, thus making competitors that couldn't afford it not competitors anymore. So how deep do we have to go with this discretion?
What again was that?
The town raised the landfill prices. And someone alleged that I did that to eliminate business, that people could, some guys,
To eliminate competition.
eliminate competition, that they couldn't afford to come and pay that.
What competition are we talking about?
Small island, garden.
Because you have a small
But
business.
it was brought up in public, so how far do you go with
But
it?
that's crazy. So you need the discretionary ability plus a financial benefit. And again, you have to look at the definition of financial benefit. But I don't see how raising the fees is a financial benefit to you.
Right.
Entire fees as well. Right. So it doesn't make sense, but that's again, something that you can avail yourself as if this, like, if we had this code in place, you can ask for an advisory opinion on just that. And then you have that as a shield to when the complaints like that are made.
If it goes your way.
I mean,
But which in this particular hypothetical seems it would.
Yeah.
that's way far-fetched.
Very tenuous.
Oh, I know, but somebody brought it up in public, so.
Yeah, but yeah,
Out there.
people can bring up, and actually having a good code hopefully protects ethical employees from ridiculous.
Those same people, Jerry, were not listening on the rationale of why we were raising it. Why were we raising the fees? We weren't raising the fees for that particular reason. I was there yesterday, a lot of activity going on there, trucks coming in and out with getting rid of product. And they were grinding, that grinder has been going nonstop for the last 3 or 4 days. That's the reason, because you can't keep product there. You need to bring it in and get rid of it. Those machines don't run on for free.
Yeah, and there's a degree of separation. We've had a case where somebody lived way over there, like a mile away. Are they going to benefit as a board member from something over here? No. If they were the next door neighbor, maybe they would.
When it comes to this disclosure section, I was wondering if there's a form that could help people determine what is appropriate to disclose or like what information they would need to disclose. I mean, this is helpful, but
Yeah,
part of it is, when you're thinking it through, is there a fill in the blanks kind of form or trigger questions that people should go through and answer?
trigger.
Like, questions to help people think through the disclosure. Like, what is the important information for the ethics board to have in order to fully, analyze if there's a conflict? Do you have a questionnaire like that?
You open the door to it. Jerry would have to disclose that, again, if we're deeming it a conflict of the fees. I own a landscaping business, and that would arguably benefit. So that's the disclosure. Or my spouse owns a landscaping business.
Okay.
Whoever would be, you got to just show what the nexus is.
connections
with
are.
the financial benefit.
Got it.
Right. It would be a bare bones disclosure
Yeah.
under these circumstances. The zoning board of appeals has a more extensive
Okay, yeah,
disclosure.
that's kind of what I was thinking of in my head.
I think we have to be just a little careful once in a while when we get questioned on, even if we think the questions are outrageous and far afield, and we don't blow them away, saying, you know what, that's a legitimate question. Here's my answer to that. You address the answer. By the way, you brought up, here's why we did what we did. If you have a problem with that, feel free to move forward with it. I have nothing to hide.
Yeah.
You know, you can't be super defensive about these things because there are people, we live in a society where this is becoming more apparent, more frequent, where government officials are going to be questioned on everything. So if you hold your cool a little bit, you just say, all right, listen, that's a good question. That's not why we raised it. I don't know where you would get that from, but here's the reason why. Explain it to them.
That's a good point to try to do.
Yeah, diffuse it.
There's going to be a fair amount of disclosure on this, as there should be, because
Right.
if you disclose, okay, it goes back to what's a conflict of interest. I have a private interest that might conflict with the public interest. If you disclose that, it doesn't become a violation. It's still a conflict of interest,
Right.
but you've disclosed it. And you're not, so I'm imagining some kind of a template that just says my name, my private interest, and I recuse on certain votes, you know.
That's essentially what I was asking.
Right, it could be as simple as
Just to
an
like-
email.
Yeah, so
but-
people know that they're filling it out correctly, or at least providing the appropriate information.
Yeah,
is what I'm- yeah.
just those things.
Okay.
Very simple.
Yeah, and it's recusal and abstention. So the way, you can't be in the room.
Right.
Or any discussions, you can't be on a text thread, an email thread, you can't, once you disclose it and you accuse, you're out. But there are like exemptions in the code. The adoption of the town's annual budget are exempt. That if it applies to all officers, employees, all residents, taxpayers, general public, you know, there's no disclosure, recusal, abstention required. And then obviously things that you have no discretion on, or you don't have the authority to appoint someone who has discretion on, then you're all right as well.
Right, I mean, the option would be like an annual disclosure form that some places have and has been suggested here a little bit. Everybody kind of preemptively lists their private interests, and then the building department can watch out for that or whatever. At this point, we don't recommend that. It's late in the game. We could look at that over the next year because it is a preemptive or inoculation type thing. But instead, what we would have be what's called transactional disclosure.
So Stephen, because it's kind of a different world now, with Zoom meetings, if like I'm looking, my name is there, but I'm muted and no picture, would that be good enough recusal, or do you have to get off the Zoom meeting?
I think it would be intimidation, just the fact that you're there.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I want to make that clear.
Yeah.
When I
potential for
had that
intimidation.
thing happen 2 months ago with the benefits for the veterans, I left the room. I didn't want to be in the room to listen to the conversation. I just left the room because I am going to directly benefit by that decision. So,
Yeah.
why sit here and make people feel uncomfortable?
Yeah.
It's not, go sit out in the hallway.
That's
Which is
what
exactly what I did.
And hypothetically, and I have no idea if this is realistic, but a zoning board member, an application, and he or she lives next door. Well, he's got to leave the room, not be involved in any of the email or texts or anything, or have any conversations about that. It just keeps it clean. That's recusal.
So, using that example,
Okay.
what if as a neighbor, he has a strong opinion on it?
Opinions are,
Can he speak? In other words, can he come to the hearing and speak?
No.
it seems that that would have an influence on his
I know.
colleagues. So
Now, if he sent his significant other to speak in his stead, would that also be a conflict? I mean, how far down the rabbit hole? Like, that's, I guess, part of where it gets confusing for people.
It's just, again, if you threw your hat in to take a certain role, you have to give up some rights.
Right.
And that is one right. If an applicant's right next door, you and your spouse give up the right to be heard in that particular situation.
but would your stepsister-in-law be able to come and talk? Probably, you know.
Exactly. But that,
Doesn't really seem fair.
You mean to
life isn't fair,
You
Jerry.
should recuse yourself, but if you have a strong feeling that, for or against, obviously be against it, as a property owner,
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
I don't know.
And then I just want to address real quick on the disclosures.
If you look at 8-5C, if you're an elected office, you have, the disclosure shall be filed with the town board and the Board of Ethics. All disclosures have to be filed with the Board of Ethics, and then it's just basically who's your boss. So in all other cases, the disclosure shall be with the Board of Ethics and the person's supervisor. If that person doesn't have a supervisor, the disclosure shall be filed with the officer, employee, or board have the power to appoint the person's position. In addition, in the case of a person serving on the board, so ZBA member, a copy of the disclosure shall be filed with said board and included in the minutes of the board's meeting.
So that's kind of as limited as we can have a recusal and abstention and disclosure thing
Right.
under the comptroller's guidelines. Okay, we'll come back on any of this you want to.
Yeah.
On A7, before we leave recusals, why is the town budget, adoption of the town budget, do you think not included?
Because if you're given salary increases, benefit.
It's in state law too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It just seems
So it's
odd that
all those
it's not required.
exemptions.
You know, we can,
You can.
yeah,
In other words, if we propose a budget with a
with a,
5% increase that all the town board members.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to run government if you.
I guess, okay.
Yeah, those exemptions are right out of state law. If it affects everybody in the community or a large part of them.
Yeah.
I think it's, I'm not sure what your timeline is, but as questions emerge, we should have some more conversation at some point.
Oh, you
Definitely.
see an issue, yeah, definitely.
Investments in conflict with official duties. As I, 8-8, as I mentioned, this is the most limited version of that as is required by state law. When you come into a position, and that's not just the town board, but other boards and other jobs that have discretionary authority, and hold your investments that you walked in the door with, but you're not supposed to acquire new ones after that. And we don't have the spouse included in this, is because the state law only requires employees to, have this as a conflict. Some towns do include the spouse.
And it's not in all investments, right? It's
No.
ones that will require more than sporadic recusal and may impair your judgment.
Right, investments in conflict. Right, exactly. It's no officer may acquire those, you can hold them still.
Right.
Again, most of this is from state law, private employment in conflict.
Yeah, this is moonlighting.
Right, that's right out of state law.
It's the same thing, only if there's a substantial conflict with your second job. If it causes more than sporadic recusal, if disclosure or use of confidential information is required, or you represent someone in an action where the town is a party. And then also, you can't appear in front of your own board or board you appointed. Or you can't appear in front of any board if your fee is based on a particular outcome.
This aspect of state law, it can get dense and complicated. That's why we like to quote state law, because there's a bunch of comptrollers, advisory opinions, attorney general advisory opinions, and even some court cases that define some of these terms.
Okay.
So that's why we're not going beyond the state law in some of them.
That makes sense, like,
Yeah.
zoning board. You don't want, a zoning board member to present an application in front of the zoning.
Right.
Right. Okay. You covered these other two sections there, right, Stephen, 805, 81, C and D.
Yeah.
Future employment. State law requires towns to have something in their ethics code on future employment. we recommend a 1-year cooling off period for direct conflicts in that. Some towns, I think, have 2 or even 3 years there.
I asked for examples on all three of those, A, B, and C. I don't really understand the rationale there. You leave town employment
Listen, I got a good one.
and
I left town employment and then I went and got a job with Cornell Cooperative Extension in their habitat restoration program.
how about,
But that would be no
how
good.
about a building inspector who retires and then goes out on his own and comes before the,
I don't see it as much. That's not,
It's happened, you know,
Yeah.
But they're saying that would be a conflict because you'd have.
why is it a conflict? Why, that's what I'm
Because it could be
asking.
applications that you reviewed and
Because you have influence. over
denied, and
people.
then you present that application to the ZBA or
Like,
something.
for instance, for me, I represent the zoning board. I wouldn't be able to represent a client in front of that zoning board review.
oh,
Makes sense? I advised the board for
Just
years.
that you're limiting the field even more from people volunteering for jobs.
So that is
They leave the position, then they have to wait 1 to 2 years before they can
1 year.
what they did previously.
1 year.
Yeah, if it's something they were directly involved with, like the zoning board or the building department, I think.
So if we're really emphasizing prevention, when it comes to ethics, everything is not white and black. There are grays in between, shades of gray.
Yeah.
So when in doubt, you go to the website and you look and you try to find the answers under the ethics law, the changes. After that, when you're still not sure and you've read through it, but it's complicated, who are you going to call? Ghostbusters, you guys.
Yeah.
We're going to call you.
We take those questions seriously.
I think that's something that has to be emphasized, that, I've read it, I've gone to the website, I've looked at it more closely, I've gone to the town attorney, and maybe it's sought some advice here, but when in doubt, just as a means of prevention, make a phone call. If it's urgent, we need to act on this within 48 hours, it's gonna come up at the next meeting, you're a phone call away, then maybe you can get together.
We would try. We
Yeah,
wouldn't be
but most
offering.
of this, it's gonna take some time, and you say, hey, listen, it does come up for the next 3 weeks. If you can give us some type of direction, the town board some direction, that would be helpful. So that's something we're gonna use, I think that's the advantage of having an active ethics board that can address these issues, the grays, the shades of gray.
And the town attorney who's well
Right.
versed in it now.
But if it says something, then it's written in stone. I mean, on 810C, I have no problem with that. Which the employee personally substantially participated while serving.
Uh-huh.
But the other two, I just don't get it.
Let's talk.
First one, Jerry, is like, say you were sitting on a special permit application, right? And you left before the special permit application was finished. Obviously, you can't represent that applicant in front of the board you were sitting on. That's what the first one is. That's if you leave and represent someone on a matter that's pending, or 30 days after that.
That's not, I read it as you can't do it, period.
No.
And I'll use a name. Christine came in to represent a client. According to this, you shouldn't have done that.
No. If he was, no.
It was more than a year.
Yeah, it was,
No. This is not the year prohibition. This is one.
That's B.
If you're sitting, hearing an application, and then you decide to
I
leave
understand that.
midstream.
I
you
get
can't
that.
That's what this
That's
is.
sort of the same as C. Yeah.
That's,
No,
no, that's A.
That's A.
And then B,
B is the one with the 1 year cooling off period.
Yeah, that's called revolving door. That's the 1 year cooling off period is revolving door. The third one is anything you are intimately involved
Right.
with.
I mean, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so like the wastewater treatment facility, if you wanted to represent someone who was putting it in or something, you couldn't because you have all this intimate knowledge. Or if you represented a Friends of group or anybody else who wanted to fight against it, you couldn't do that.
So B is the one that's, so I don't know if this is a real example or not. Let's say somebody leaves as a building inspector. Can they come back to the building department and help somebody in the next year under this?
Yes, I think that's a little different.
someone submit an application to the building department, you're asking?
Under B, I would say not if it's less than a year.
Because there's not really discretion This is for employees that have exercise discretion. When
Right.
you go to a building department, if you meet A, B, and C from the,
Right.
go to the town code, you get it.
Like presenting to
It's ministerial.
zoning, planning.
So Chris Tehan can come back and expedite because there's no discretion.
Even if he wrote the denial letter?
No, that.
No, that would be C.
Yeah, that would be
Okay, so
C.
that moves it to C,
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
So you're raising good questions, but this 1 year period is the shortest period that we found.
But it's up to the board. The board wants to not have it, or 30 days, or 6 months, or whatever, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. It's up to the board as far as the number.
The way you just described it is administrative.
Yeah.
Right.
811, fair enough. 812, use of town resources is pretty much right out of the employee handbook, and we're trying not to change things in the employee handbook, but to repeat them for people.
Wait, can we just go back to 811 now that, I'm just thinking this through. This might allow you as neighbor, no, you still have to recuse yourself if you're a neighbor and your opponent, but you, if you, as a zoning board member, can come in and make an application on your own, that's what this is saying, on your own application in front of the zoning board. So personal representations is fine.
Right.
So if, again, you own a home, you want to build a deck into a setback, you're on the zoning board, you're not forestalled from coming in and making an application in front of the zoning board. Again, it's only,
So the same should hold true with, if I want to speak again, if I'm on the zone.
no, that's different, you're objecting as opposed to your own personal representation. You could, or maybe you could shoehorn, that's a great opinion you could ask for. That might be something that could be shoehorned into that.
Yeah, but you see the point of having recusal
Yeah.
outside.
Yeah.
And if they're emailing and texting too, it's the same thing. It just.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the big ones down here, I think we used to have this at school, is the use of vehicles. So, and I work for the town, out of the highway department during the day, Monday through Friday. On Saturday, I'm doing something, personal property, borrow the town truck.
Yeah.
To be able to use that, to move that. I got the permission of the head of the department. We gas it, refuel it, or whatever. Is that allowed or not allowed? It sounds to me like it.
Well, you're saying,
It sounds like
I think the only time that's been granted is if it's like, you need a truck for the 10K, or it's some kind of town event. It's not
Town
like,
event,
if you're
right.
having a party at your house, can I take the town truck to get everything?
right.
You know,
Absolutely prohibited.
Right.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
Good questions. Interest in contract was the purpose for the legislature to pass this whole thing back 50 years ago. And I think that this flow chart that I did spells it out better, because there's a 4 or 5 part test on that. And of course, the first 2 questions are answered yes, that there is a contract and it's an employee. Then if the employee doesn't have a financial interest with their spouse and minor children only, not their brothers, sisters, rest of them, then it's fine. If they do have a indirect financial interest in their family, right in their house, then do they have authority over the contract? Do they have powers over the contract? If they don't, then that's fine. If it's somebody else that has authority over the spending or the contract, that's all fine. If they do have authority over it, are they covered by any exemption? There's a bunch of exemptions, exceptions. I'm not thinking of them offhand. But when it gets down to, there's no exception, the bottom line on this, disclosure is required and interest, and that interest is prohibited, not supposed.
this is a good chart, yeah.
Yeah, I just put that together to help over the weekend. That really helps to see, well, where are things?
Yeah.
So it's a complicated area. There's lots of case law on and comptroller opinions, but interest in contract is where this whole state law started. Because people in other towns were doing crazy stuff back in Tammany Hall days.
Yeah.
That only applies to people that have the power over the contract. And then they're supposed to disclose that. Other things, you want to add anything to interest in contracts?
No, if there's no questions.
No,
Political solicitations, I think that's already in the employee handbook.
I think it kind of came up, maybe came up last election. Under political solicitations, you can't compel a subordinate to come to your function. But you shouldn't be able to prohibit a subordinate from going to
Someone else's function?
someone else's, or campaigning on behalf of another. And there might have been some intimidation. Anyway, so can that go in there, or should that go in there?
Well, it's, if you read it, compel or induce a subordinate town officer or employee to make or promise to make any political contribution, whether by gift or money, service, or other thing of value.
Right.
So it's kind of in
Prohibit
there.
them from going and campaigning. Or being involved in a campaign that may not be yours.
Well, that could be construed,
Is that under B, do you think?
yeah.
May act or decline to act in relation to.
No,
That's also,
or decline to act in relation to appointing, no, hiring.
that has to do with contribution of money.
Yeah,
Yeah,
But it could also be a
thing of
service
value.
or another valuable thing for political purpose. Someone's presence at something may be a
Exactly.
valuable thing
Right.
to that person. So it
Right.
would fall under B.
okay.
okay. Great to raise these questions. Confidential information, I think we mentioned that. Gifts, state law does have it says $75 is de minimis, but you don't want to be taking gifts that are intended to influence you or be offering gifts to people intending to influence them, right?
Yep.
Disclosure disclosure in certain applications. Now that's something that the town does follow the state law in. It's disclosure, for instance, in the zoning board applications
Yeah,
by the applicant. An outside person is supposed to say if any officer or employee or their spouse has an interest in that land use application. So this,
Oh, good, because that was my question on this one. Is it part of the application process?
yeah, and the onus is on the applicant, actually. If they don't know that the sister-in-law has an interest, then supposedly they don't have to put it down.
Yeah. So it's another affirmative check
Yeah.
on
Right.
potential conflicts of interest. So you vet it at that stage. Most land use is discretionary. So you put it on the applicant to out someone who might potentially have a conflict, and then you resolve it through the disclosure or recusal rules and abstention rules.
Right. And it's required by state law, like I said, we do it. That doesn't fall on the Board of Ethics or,
Right.
and because it's an applicant, it's somebody out there.
But it's severe, though, like, as you see, it's a misdemeanor if you
Yeah.
don't do it, so applicants should take it serious. Also, like other townships on this one, they include the owner and the applicant. If the owner's not the applicant, it's also the expediter or the attorney or the architect or the engineer. They would also have to fill out one of those forms. So it's, I don't know if you want to broaden that or keep it as is, it's up to you.
So, yeah, just as every applicant, so it's.
So if the applicant or their agent,
Yeah,
You'll be applicant, owner and applicant, because the applicant generally, for like more sophisticated applications are generally architect or an expediter.
Right.
So you want to put owner and applicant.
And or.
No, and
And,
you want both,
both,
To be owner or applicant.
and applicant.
and,
Yeah, so they can't just hide behind somebody else.
Yes.
Okay, we can come back on any of these. These are the standards to the administration so that y'all don't have to figure out these standards. It sets us up to be able to do an initial cut on them, right? And we do have a board of 5 good people. Under 818C, we say that ethics board members are not supposed to be like candidates, stuff like that. If they become a candidate for something, they can drop off the ethics board.
right.
Under 18B, 5 members, all of whom reside in the town of Shelter Island. I've spent the better part of a year discussing what reside means. So do we want to be specific about that, or do we want to be vague?
I think vague is fine.
Vague is fine. What is a resident of Shelter Island?
What's the answer?
Well, it's different sections of the code.
That's it. Depends on,
Property owner.
your property owner, but a renter, could qualify and.
Yeah, I think you
Yeah.
you leave it vague and allow the board, because again, you see
Yeah.
how much trouble we have getting.
Yeah, you could be a property owner but not be a full-timer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, which,
Or the primary resident.
Was that a renter?
Right.
so it
So-
doesn't have to be on your driver's license, you mean?
No, it doesn't, not,
Reside here.
right, not for moorings. You just have to be a property owner, for instance.
Okay, so you guys
Lease.
have dealt with that, but
Yeah.
obviously we want as good a people as possible.
Yeah, and as broad
So
a,
if
I
we
think-
leave it broad, I think that's good.
Laura and I and Shelby live here full-time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
The other 2 members are in Manhattan, part-time, and here,
Right.
like half and half,
Yeah,
in
yeah,
our case.
yeah.
But you do want to have,
Bring a certain degree of expertise and knowledge, and,
oh, yes,
that's important.
I'm worried that if
That's true
they,
of all committees.
somebody will challenge it, that's what
and they have to get here for quorums too.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
get,
so that's up to you, basically, who you appoint.
that kind of nitpicky.
So conditions, getting out if they're in politics. Removal for cause, okay, there's for cause removal under 818C3.
Yep.
That's to give us some degree of independence that a bad town board and somebody else can get in there and just wipe the whole board out.
Board. That makes sense. Yeah, because I was going to say in the preamble, it says that you receive no compensation and serve at the pleasure of the board, but then here, remove for cause. I was like, so which one is that? Remove for cause or pleasure of the board? But remove for cause makes sense,
It's cause.
considering the fact that you'd be ruling on
Yeah.
potential conflicts, and
Yeah.
that could become a conflict. They
Right,
want you off
this
the
can be
board.
stricter than the state law.
Yes.
And it is a little bit.
Okay,
And
yeah, that makes sense.
staggered 5-year terms too, so you get a full.
Right,
Yeah, for the same reason.
yep,
And y'all would have to decide how to stagger us 5 members, whatever.
Right.
You know, you could be reappointed if
Yep.
you wanted. But,
They put that in.
yeah.
yeah, I think
Had its-
some of these boards have staggered terms already in town,
Yeah.
don't they?
Yes.
Most, I think most of them.
So include us in that cycle. You're just starting us up again. And there's the 3 methods of asking opinions: confidential employee advisory opinions, number 1. Number 2, somebody files a complaint or asks us to resolve a question. And number 3, we act on our own to resolve the question.
I have a highlight on that. How would you be aware of it?
Small town, Jerry. You hear things.
Just walk around. Yeah,
Wouldn't you investigate why it wasn't brought to you? As opposed to,
by who?
you say I don't know, you're saying you heard about something and the board's gonna investigate it. My first inclination would be why didn't anybody report this to us?
I don't know. Who's supposed to report? I mean,
That's what you're investigating.
there's no,
Yeah, I look at it as just another set of eyes and ears, you know, I mean, the ethics board, if you should come across something that you think
yeah,
deems importance to investigate, investigate.
yeah.
There's nothing
I
wrong
mean,
with that.
for all you know, you might see something on Facebook and be like, well, that's curious. And then, you know, you see all kinds of ridiculousness on there. So who knows where they might get some ideas from.
Yeah, but
But
The
it's
thing
checks
that-
and balances, it seems like.
yeah. And the thing they raise needs to be a financial conflict of interest,
Right.
not some loose ethical
Right.
question. Oh, you didn't tell the truth, or you didn't stop at this stop sign.
Right, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
So there's an investigations procedure that we could expand in some rules to make it clear, but this is kind of a bare bones. It's based on the Southampton model, which was advised by one of the state's leading experts in this.
Is there a complaint form? I know I'm asking a lot of questions about forms.
There will be.
But-
No, but there could be. I actually drafted one, but I don't have approval of my board.
Okay.
It might be something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, simple, very simple,
Right.
very easy to fill out.
Right.
You know.
And it also helps get you the information you need to get started on reviewing it. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
That
you can
was
see
just where
this.
my thought was.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I did, but
okay.
I pestered my board with a lot of what ifs. and this was one of them.
Yeah,
Those damn investigative reporters.
A lot of work went into this stuff, a lot of work.
It did, and I think it's,
You can see it.
I think it could be a gold standard.
Yeah, this is not something you sit down and do over the course of 2 or 3 meetings. You said it's a year-long, you know,
It has to,
investigation.
yeah.
It's pretty well done, I'll tell you. We're going from something which was totally unacceptable to something that's comprehensive, I think, and good, you know? With the emphasis on education and prevention, which, and enforcement as a backup, but
Yeah.
that's where it needs to be.
And it's fair, like, there's other townships that take a heavier handed approach.
Yeah.
This board, again, you know, really was deliberate and
Yeah,
made sure that, you know, again, I keep harping on the intricacies of Shelter Island or
Yeah.
memorialized in there.
well, and I think it's understandable too. It's been written in such a way that I think the general public can digest it or kind of figure out where they fall in it. You know, if
For
they
the
have
most part,
questions,
yeah.
yeah.
thank you.
Great job.
Thanks, appreciate that. So this does have a little 8-9 investigations B. I think that those oaths and everything are like backup power to have on our back.
So
Yeah.
how do you actually enforce the right to compel testimony?
Yeah,
Subpoena power. That's in essence what you're hinting at, like, just so you know, the ZBA has it.
Okay,
So that's when you, by being in the code and you're authorizing that board to have that ability. Which, again, it shouldn't be used
Shouldn't be used lightly.
No,
but-
no.
nilly, but they do need it in certain circumstances.
And we've had a lot of debate within the Board of Ethics about that. I, as a former journalist, I didn't have subpoena power, and I did okay with investigating this. But this is to have it in the back pocket. What do we have that might be of interest? Administration and reporting, should we go down to 820? Sure.
Let's just back up real quick.
Okay.
819C, any person filing a complaint with the ethics board and every person who's alleged in such a complaint to violate this code shall be notified in writing of the disposition of the complaint. I think that's important.
Yeah,
You know, the complainants are informed as to what the disposition is, and obviously the target as well, in writing.
yes.
Yeah. traditionally, yeah,
Is that where we had the town board too? Remember we talked about that?
that would be under 820,
Yeah, we'll get to that now.
Oh, we'll get into that.
Next section.
right? Wait a second. Oh, yeah, the 820C,
Mhm.
right? Oh, that's the ones where it is a sustained complaint, like, shouldn't do that.
Yeah. And we were talking before, we should even see the ones that are just.
Yeah, so it's written broad enough, I think, to forward its opinions, responding to complaints or opinions on its own motion to the town board with recommendations,
Oh, yeah,
disciplinary action and penalties.
you're right. So that's actually broad enough where this though, well, isn't really right, right? If it's a complaint that we say
Yeah, still go.
unwarranted,
Yeah.
we could still
Still
go, yes.
forward it.
That's why we don't rely on flow charts like this.
Can we go back to B,
Yeah,
administrative and
I
reporting?
think the expression go with the flow.
The Board of Ethics shall have the confidential advice of legal counsel employed by the town or outside counsel. So I can see if you're investigating the town attorney, you want outside counsel. Does this give the ability to the ethics board, Stephen, to just get outside counsel on their own, or?
No,
Should.
because it's or, and the Board of Ethics shall have the confidential advice of legal counsel employed by the town or outside counsel. I think it really is meant if I was the target.
Or the town board could decide that outside counsel should, even if you're not the target.
Yeah, yes.
so should that be,
I just want to make sure it's just understood that.
yeah, well,
So you think your town attorney's overwhelmed work and you want to take him away from the Board of Ethics. Which I would never want to be taken away because I love them.
do you think?
Not overwhelmed.
Does it have to be worded differently, or can we, it's understood, or?
I think it's fine.
This book cost $35. It took me 4 months to get budget approval.
That's what I was going to say. The outside attorney fees would be a budget issue, which I believe would have to go
We don't have a
through.
budget.
Yeah.
We could put our outside counsel as approved by the town board.
No, but wait, can we not envision a time where the ethics committee might want to go hire an attorney and the town board or a majority of them don't agree? And they should have the right to go, they should have the ability to go hire, because, you know what I'm kind of saying here?
It's a good point. It is a good point.
Because you want their independence.
Yeah, and I don't think they're gonna be like out there profligate with our, our independent, our council dollars, outside council dollars. We have somebody on retainer.
So we have to, yeah, just.
I think they should be able to act independently in this instance.
How would you do that though? Because attorneys cost money.
I
No, I
know.
would say, I would designate, a certain amount of money up to,
Have, in that one budget line,
Professional services.
professional services, yeah.
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 We have where it's not to the dime, we don't know what they're actually gonna cost in a
Right,
year.
yeah, because, I mean, when I did it last year, I just, like, the audit's gonna be $12. But,
Right,
grants
yeah.
writer, yeah, there's like multiple
Things in that
things
line.
that go into that line,
Yeah.
Yes.
estimates.
So that's how.
Budget line, but it goes back to the town if it's unspent.
It does.
Yeah, it goes into reserves.
It does, yes, yeah.
But,
But that's what a budget is.
I mean, I think it's highly unlikely what I'm talking about, highly unlikely,
But
but
if it's needed, it would be an extreme case where it would be
it
needed.
would be needed, exactly.
This is an example. I think this might have come out of your budget. I don't know whose budget this came out of. It cost me $5. 4 months. What if we wanted to hire a $200 an hour lawyer for a couple hours?
You just,
I can't.
yeah, you just figure it out.
That's
Do it. I mean, if you think the town board is the conflict,
correct.
I think you have to have the freedom to go do that.
Or if you think the town board with their attorney is the conflict, I mean, there's conflict between the two.
Yeah.
Box everybody out in order to investigate, and that makes sense.
Clearly doesn't apply here, but
I think it would be a rare case.
Yeah.
But I think you should have that option. And I'm glad you brought it up.
Okay.
Because I think you should have that for you.
yeah.
Then we want to not publish these opinions. One of us might like to, but Others don't want to on the website, but to publish like a 1 or 2 sentence summary of the opinions that completely hides the identity of the person for the guidance of other employees.
Right.
And
I mean-
I've drafted some of these for actual cases we handled that I'd have to get approved for
Okay.
anonymity.
Just out of curiosity, in the last 12 months, how many have you generated?
We had 7 opinions.
7. Oh, good.
In the first year, we had 6, and then we've had 1, and of those, 4 of them, we asked them to change something, and the other 3, we said, it's fine.
Yeah, my only comment on that was, I made notes on mine, is that because Shelter Island is so small, no matter how much you retract from
Yes.
some of these opinions, people are still going to be like, oh, I know what that's about.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my only concern with publishing them in that way.
Yeah, well, I'll read a couple of these. These are just drafts. It's okay for a town advisory board member to participate and vote on matters which may have a remote or tenuous connection to that person's business. Do you know who that was?
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
A few people, that's good. If you can think of a few people, that's good. Yeah.
If you're like, I know
Things
exactly.
like that.
You know,
'Cause I know
you have
this.
to be vague enough.
Yeah.
By the way, and I don't think that's the whole purpose of this, try to connect the dots and find out who the complainant it is.
Oh, no, I agree.
Yeah.
But it's
but
human
you-
nature.
No, it is human nature.
Yeah.
It is human nature, but, hopefully, part of your ethical standard is getting above that, and just, hey, listen, you feel like you haven't been satisfied, you have that's why we have a committee.
On penalties, imposition of penalties or sanctions shall be within the discretion of the town board. Is that you're gonna make recommendations or?
We can, I think.
Yeah, I don't think you were gonna make specific recommendations as to the penalty. You were gonna refer to the town board that is saying something
Doesn't-
is required.
But 820C says we can make recommendations,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
It does.
This has been a area of
Yes,
debate within our group
Yeah.
because some of us don't want to go,
yeah, they wanted to just,
I understand.
send the hot potato to you.
Right.
And you make the sole determination as to any disciplinary actions. And then there's some that have different opinions. And, Duff and I went back and forth on this penalty section. I think it's a little light. Like I would like Southampton's penalty section is 2 pages long. And what I like about it, I don't necessarily think it has to be 2 pages, but I think the town board needs a clear menu of what your options are, what your fines are up to. And then it also is a deterrent effect to employees knowing, oh my God, I can really face this, this, and this, and it's crystal clear. And then also the public knows what consequences are and that the town board takes it serious, that they have these different options to employ. So that's where, Duff and I, we agreed on 99.9%.
we agree to disagree on this. Because I don't think it should be loaded with a long penalty section. Penalties are in here. You can discipline people in here.
But as a prosecutor, and other municipalities have it, you have criminal liability, civil liability, if you have to go to Supreme Court to get a civil fine. There's also, might be circumstances where you have to go to Supreme Court to get an injunction against certain behavior. And you really want that it has to be in there if you're going to be able to utilize it. It can't just be this brief, because this brief, it's unconstitutionally vague and you won't be able to.
I mean,
So Duff and I decided we're going to let you as the town board make that decision.
20C does address it, voted its opinions responding to complaints or opinions on its own motion to the town board with any recommendations for disciplinary actions and penalties.
but that may just say we recommend disciplinary action.
What are those?
What are those
Universe.
disciplinary actions?
Have a laundry list of
I
them.
actually kind of agree with Stephen on this one, in that I look at penalties and I go, well, I could just decide I don't like this guy and I want, kicked off the board in 2000.
Banishment.
Whatever. But like, I feel like it needs some qualifiers so it doesn't become arbitrary.
Yes.
But
There are parameters.
Can we use the handbook?
Corrective action
And
in
put that
here.
in penalties?
If you violate any policy, there's a procedure for corrective
That's
action.
administrative.
Right.
So you have administrative, then you have a different silo criminal, you have a different silo civil. So there's three different, and they should have the ability to pick and choose what they want
Can you
based
give
on.
us an example at our next meeting? Or 2 meetings from now? You know what I'm saying? Of what does this look like?
Yes,
What
yeah.
a penalty section could
Yeah.
look like, because
That would be easier. I can't.
Yeah, and you can decide. Again, there's some merit to what Duff's saying.
it doesn't have to be like 400 pages.
Very minimal merit.
It should have some structure to it.
You know, so that it's not arbitrary and dependent upon who happens to be on the board and who likes who.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And the deterrent thing shouldn't be totally ignored. The deterrent may be significant for some.
I do hear what you're saying about the handbook, and I think that definitely plays a part in it, but I
Yeah.
think that for the legal side, it needs a little more structure.
So just wrapping up this, as an idea, there's said to be three legs of a good conflict of interest policy. A clear code, disclosure when there's a conflict, and then administration. And I think
Right.
we've got all three of those.
Great job.
Okay,
Very, very comprehensive. Nicely done.
thanks. I appreciate the support I felt.
I know how hard it is to get a committee, to sit and focus and produce a work or edit a big edit on an existing work. So I am really appreciative of this. This is really, I know what goes into it, or, how hard it is to corral those cats.
Yeah. It's with the support of my wife.
Editing.
Next steps. So we've got like a couple things. Do we want to make like a couple of minor edits as the penalty section?
Let's discuss it at the next work session that we're
Yes.
on for a public hearing at the following board meeting.
Yeah, that's a good plan.
Okay.
Duff's not invited.
You're gonna have like a 10-page penalty.
He's also the town board comedian, by the way.
That penalty,
You have to just kind of go with him a little bit, though. Don't ever take it personally. Yeah. Some edits and then most, that part at the end, I think that tends to get a little bit match, I think.
It sounds like we want the dismissed ones to come to the board, so we'll change that. So on the investment section, do we want to make it more restrictive and add the spouse? Leave that, because I still have that as an open question.
It's a good question.
Yeah, I had that with the question mark too.
But think about for 2 weeks. I think we have those 4 or 5 things plus the penalty thing to look at. So we can all think about those privately and
Yeah,
put on the agenda, hash it out.
yeah. And the investments you asked about, just to be clear, this is restrictions on acquiring investments. New ones.
Right. After you get into office. All right.
Duff, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks a
Yeah,
lot.
this was great.
Thanks to the committee.
I just need to grab a water.
Is that it? Should I go?
I think so.
Great.
If you want to stay on the right side of your wife, I would say yes, so
It's too nice to stay in here.
Well, I can't buy any manure because Jerry's store's not
You
open.
can just go take it like everybody else. Just write it down while you. She'll be there Thursday. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your bag's under there, I think, though.
The table. There you go. It blends with the curtain.
Okay, Stephen?
Yes, thank you, Duff.
Okay.
Thanks again. Thank you.
thank you very much.
Okay, that's it on the agenda items and board member reports. Meg?
So we have. Here, okay. So we have a CPAC meeting on Monday, the 17th at 6:30 to go over the governance chapter. And if we finish that early, we'll get started on natural environment. That'll be the other chapter we do this month. But yeah, so Monday, 17th, 6:30, CPAC meeting. The library is having an open house on Thursday, the 13th, to talk about some of their expansion plans. So
What time is that, Mike? Do you know?
6 o'clock at night, 6 PM. And then they're having another one Saturday, the 15th at 10 o'clock with their architect and construction manager. So if people have additional questions, they'll be there. And that's.
And the comp plan is a work session.
The comp plan is a work session for the CPAC to review the chapters the same way we've reviewed all the previous chapters. And we're just going to meet twice this month and twice next month so that we can wrap up all the chapters and so that the consultants can come up with a final, like a draft for the public to then review.
But if the public has comments, as usual, end of the meeting
Absolutely.
or,
Submit them.
or online, go right to the chapter, make the comments right there on the chat.
Because, at the end of each week, we're submitting any comments we receive to the consultants. So that they can incorporate it into the draft that they're working on. And all the chapters are on the website. So they're there for you to comment on. Other than that, that's it. That's all I got.
With 2 meetings yesterday, CAC for one, I'll go with that one, and then BJ and I can pick up on the WMAC. We met last night, 6 of the 7 members were present. Dan Clark had a conflict there with another town with kids, so he was not there. That did impact one of the reports on invasive plants that he'll present to the next meeting. We did spend about 30 minutes discussing the role, the wetlands applications, pros and cons of that. I think one of the 2 chair people started that off by introducing that topic and wanting to get feedback from the other 5 members of his committee, asking whether they were for or against the fact that the town board was relinquishing their responsibilities in terms of wetlands applications. Interesting enough, after I spoke for quite a while on this, and Christina actually did some interesting input also on this topic. I think the committee had a different take on it a little bit. And by the end of the meeting, I think it was pretty well supported that they would like to see what is being recommended. They were very evenly matched in terms of seeing the merits and trying to understand the direction that the town board is trying to go in terms of handling these wetlands applications. Who is in the best position, who is most qualified, who is most likely to make site visits, and the expertise that they have in terms of recommendations. But it was a good exchange there, I think, between the committee. We have a CAC article that is being put together by one of our members, Roxanne. Pesticides, Mark Capolino, who's the other co-chairperson, talked about Dan Gilwright. Education focuses, his recommendation is to try to focus on one thing at a time. So we do have 3 issues. We have the tick issue and the overuse perhaps of chemicals being used to fight the tick issue, less the 4-poster program, so people are more apt to be wanting to put chemicals down on their lawn. The second one is on lawn care, which seems a little bit less controversial in terms of trying to tackle that one. The third one was on pesticides and the notification to neighbors when you're going to use pesticides on your lawn. And so I think we'll try to focus on one of these three initially, but all three of them will be something that CAC will attack in the future. He did finish up by talking about new business. The Arts and Crafts Fair is August 26th, which is a Saturday. Goes opposite the Arts and Crafts Fair, and we will be represented at the CAC, and Howard is getting that in line. So that basically was the meeting. We were unable to act on the two wetlands applications because they were posted in time, and so therefore they had to be, it was delayed till next meeting, unfortunately. That was that. And I'll talk to you that, a little bit more about that in executive session. Waterways Management Advisory Council met right before that. BJ and I were both present. The Bay Constable gave us a report. And very interesting. Bo talked about the role of New York State DEC and transient anchorage areas. That was something. Something else came up from the committee about signage at the opening of Cockles Harbor, particularly addressing speed limits, because apparently the large boats are entering into Cockles Harbor at higher rates than they would like to see.
Let's just back up. So the first thing that the both said was that the FDA, which is news to us
Right.
and to the committee, has come up with new reasons, new standards to close areas to
Shellfish.
seasonal closures for shellfishing. And on Shelter Island, the impact apparently is going to be at the two transient anchorages, which is probably not a bad idea.
Yeah.
And one mooring field, but Bo said it was very vague, so he doesn't know what mooring field they're thinking about closing to shellfishing during the season. So that's coming, just to everybody know that's coming.
So it's the actual mooring field, not the.
Well, it's the two transient anchorages, West Neck and Cockle, and then one mooring field, which harbor, we don't know, might get. Yeah, that's our guess, but it's already closed, so I'm not really sure.
Right.
And then the signage that Jim referred to, it's there at the beginning at the mouth of Cockles Harbor, but it's because of migration, it's pretty far back from the water. Stevie Lennox brought it up yesterday morning at a Bayman's meeting that we had here about the shellfish law. And he just said you can't see it. And he said, and you know, he said you got those guys coming in with 3 engines on the back of a center console, and they're not going 5 miles an hour. So he just kind of wanted that. So Bo's going to handle it.
It does get rough in that channel when you
Yeah.
have people going in and out too fast because
Yeah.
you get a lot of like wave action coming off of.
Exactly.
Small space.
It is a small space, and you know, if you're a smaller boat too, you're gonna get rocked. We're out there in a day sailor a lot, yeah. Totally.
Probably does take its toll. In terms of,
Habitat,
yeah.
Yeah.
The habitat.
right.
So those are important. We also just briefly talked about non-resident businesses seems to be coming
Water sports.
more frequent, towed activities, charges, things of that nature, lots of visitors. And I think Bo's idea was we welcome it, but we want some parameters.
He said his goal is the harbor masters, all of them, to interact with the water sport operators at the beginning of every season, you know, as they start to come filter back at the end, and to have either a handout, but more likely a spiel to say, so welcome, and this is what you can and cannot do. And so he asked the WMAC to please come up with whatever they think should be in his spiel. You know.
Yeah, something that, and then we went to the next part of the meeting, which was the Conic Bay Keepers. We had 2 representatives, Alexa and Pete Topping, came in. They are part of Blue Water Task Force. It is a nonprofit, right, BJ, a group of people. They test in over 70 sites throughout Long Island. It's basically monitoring bacteria within the sound in Conic Estuary and on the South Fork as well. Shelter Island had not been included. We do have Suffolk County Health Department that comes in that does monitor, you know, our marine areas in red and our beaches in blue. And I mean, the good news.
Suffolk County only does the lifeguarded beaches.
Correct.
Right.
The aim here is to kind of fill in a lot of, well, let's take Menhaden Lane. We're not there yet, but
Right.
that would be, you know, it's outside water too.
Right.
But that kind of beach, for now, I think we're going to start.
Beaches, then like the harbors.
Yeah, that's Suffolk County. And so we're going to start with Cockles Harbor Anchorage. Not to say that won't be expanded, but that's where it's starting. And it's also more often. It's once a week. It's every Monday morning.
Correct. And you have a 6-hour window to get these lab tests
Over to Hampton Bays.
beds. So in other words,
Bo's going to do the collecting.
yeah, Bo volunteered
Harbor Masters.
to do that, or the harbor
But
masters.
for getting it over there, we'll probably have to, a little bit of arranging, because they do this in Sag Harbor.
Right.
So maybe we can hook, and get it over to the lab.
Data would be disseminated, you'd all have access to this, bacterial counts,
Yeah,
Doesn't seem to be a huge problem, but they do see now and again, especially after maybe heavy rains, and they talked about human versus animal contamination
Right.
from the nitrogen and things of that.
$500 per year would be the cost of this, so that's not a big lift.
Yeah,
Um,
and you're talking about 24 testing times in a year.
Right,
Places that are going at $500, so it's costing about maybe $10, a clip. But
currently, the Suffolk County Health is at Wade's, testing at Wade's,
yes,
Camp Quinnipiac, Pridwin, Pearlman, Crescent. Assuming it's all the same things, not, they're just
Right.
going down the beach, I guess. And then the Shelter Island Heights Beach Club. That's pretty limited, The DEC, of course, does some testing too, but it's, I think, less frequent, and I think it's
Shellfish related.
shellfish related.
Besides Crescent Beach and Wade's Beach.
Shelter Island Heights Beach Club.
yeah.
And the rest of it's Camp Quinnipiac, Bridwin, Pearlman.
Down that whole strip.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I copied that down wrong. It seems all redundant. Yeah. So,
They do publish this information on their website, so you have access to that information
Right.
consistently. They test for enterococcal bacteria, which
Yeah.
bacteria from animal waste and other waste as well.
now Matt Williamson, I didn't quite catch this. He said he's been in touch with Suffolk County Health Department, and he said they are testing out in Cockles Harbor and West Neck, but I didn't get the specifics there. I don't think,
Give a nice, it's a new member of the WMAC.
more for paralytic.
Yeah, he did, and he gave a nice overview. Welcome to the committee, and he adds a new dimension here. He did a lot of homework on this, and a lot of research. He will continue to do that research on.
That was really interesting. One of the highest levels of bacterial fecal matter contamination is in the channel between the Ram Islands and Orient Point.
Yes, that was hard to believe, yeah.
Now, is that the heights? Is that boats as they're leaving? There's no explanation for it.
Mile off.
It's what?
It's 1 mile off where you can, isn't it like you have to be out?
Yeah, you should be out. Yeah, further. But most people don't,
In the channel between Ram Island.
the Rams and Orient.
Correct, yeah.
That's just an interesting little bit. Alvarado just told us that the county wants to list now for next year's dredging season.
Right,
So he is working on that with Bo, right?
correct. And they are looking at Manatee Creek to go further and deeper. So that's the goal this year. And we did bring up several other places that they would like to look at. But honestly, I think if we can accomplish one thing here, get Manatee Creek a little further north and a little deeper, let's not bite off more than we can chew. Let's just get this thing done if we can.
I agree 100%, Jim, but boy.
Yeah. Oh, no, I know.
wanna punch a wall.
Yeah.
Because the Manatee Creek problem.
Right.
Is solved by a wastewater treatment plant.
Right.
That puts 3 back.
Right.
Instead of 19, maybe.
Yeah.
Politics aside.
And Gardner's Creek, is another area, and Chase Creek. I mean, these are all areas of potential abuse. It's happened over the course of decades, and the quality of water is
I know
deteriorating.
dredging helps, we all know that, but
It does.
as long as you're still pouring in there.
So then after that, we looked at 7 applications. They were all approved. There were, the man mooring application was approved 6-0. It was just to relocate Dugan.
Just do those at the meeting, right, Jim?
Yeah, 6-0. They were all pretty much approved. We had a couple which were 4-2 votes. I can give you reasons why the people voted against it. But they were all basically handled with slight adjustments made in each one of those applications, basically. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Amber?
WQI met on Thursday, and one of the things they're working on currently is the WQI application. Just going through, it hasn't been revised, and they're trying to just streamline some things and eliminate some duplication of items. So they'll show it to us before they institute it. But
Thinking about raising the,
yeah, I was going to say, yeah, the second piece of this was, we had gone from $15,000 rebates to $6,000 rebates with some add-ons for shallow, pressurized shallow draining fields, things of that matter. But I went through and did an analysis of what the costs have been in the past few years, and costs have been increasing. The average cost in 2018 was $22,500. 2019, 31,000, 2020 was closer to 32,000, and then in the past 2 years, 37,000 and 36,500.
God, that's that much, huh?
That's the average cost
Wow,
of.
the average cost, huh?
And the county and the state grants can cover 20,000 of that. So the committee is considering bringing the rebates from 6,000 back up to 12 or 13,000. They're going to noodle it since we just went over the
So-
information on Thursday.
So while you were here, I was actually in there when they were discussing it the other morning, back last week. One of the things I thought about, I just throw it out for consideration, is taking a look at the red and orange on the map, and superimposing the streets right on the red and orange and targeting those areas in the center of town with a little extra, so that we know that, and again, I don't mean to bore people, but you use Meg's statistics of, I think she said 28 of the 200, which is 14% of the center, 86 are outside the center. The goal is to clean up the center of town, regardless of whether we go IA systems, as municipal wastewater, a combination thereof. It's still a first and second step. The third big step is to get as many homeowners involved. These are people
WQI
that-
agrees with you.
Okay.
I mean, and what they are hoping to do, and personnel wise, we have to look, when they're ready,
Right.
they have to have their ducks in a row to do this, but to offer, door to door or a mailing concierge services, which means we will sit with you and fill out your application, to people in the critical area.
When I brought it up, somebody just said to me, is that arbitrary? How do you make that,
It's not arbitrary, it's based on science.
I'm just saying on the, if you live across the street from the red area, that kind of thing, and that person is, because they're in the target area, is getting this kind of incentive, and I live 2 blocks away and I'm only getting this amount of money.
Well, let's test your water, and then maybe you can be inside.
I think it's justification. Yes, yeah.
But they're also, going to look at possible loan, programs.
Yes.
So that homeowners don't have to shell out the initial costs. In some cases, vendors are willing to wait to get reimbursed, but not all. So doing something with a loan program so that they can not, borrow the money to pay it out and then repay it once the grants come through. So that was another piece.
Just out of curiosity, somebody's going to ask, Meg's probably the best. What would cost the price to go up fairly substantially? Is it just?
COVID.
Material costs have gone up
Material costs, that's what I.
And it's not just the cost of the system, it's the cost of all the other things. So they might have a complicated site, so they might need to reroute their plumbing. That includes the plumbing cost, it includes test holes, it includes, some people have to move their well because the county requires it. It includes wells, it includes, it can include any number of those things. Water testing, so it's not just the septic system, but it's just the entire project in total.
So my next,
With all those
my
things.
next question is, we always blame everything on COVID, because just blame it on COVID. The marriage, the COVID, that's it. But honestly, when COVID's over, are things gonna, can it revert back so that we say, hey, listen, this is, again, I'm just thinking about the people in most need. When you heard that first thing about 17,000, 20,000, we're going to give you a bunch of money, you're going to have to lay out a few $1,000s. It was somewhat appealing, and then COVID hit, and then of course the tax thing hit, and we solved the tax thing. COVID is hopefully a thing in the rearview mirror at least. But will the price of materials come down a little bit? I thought more people that got involved in this, the bigger the industry became, more competitive it would be. You think the more competitive it would be, the more those prices would go down. And I understand the complications of each site being different, and that's a good explanation of why, every time you go to a site and there's a different set of parameters there that all has to be taken into consideration.
I mean, a really basic, non-complicated install can be done for the price of the grants, but there are very, 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 very few of those. You know, a lot of the people who end up going into it and getting all the grant money, it's because they know they have a very complicated situation and they know that they're very non-compliant and they know that they're going to need the financial help. And if the material costs haven't gone, you know, inflation's still high, material costs haven't dropped.
You're right.
You know, we have some,
Supply can get this stuff.
most of the time, I mean, there are still some delays in supply chain, but mostly it's just the cost went up and hasn't come down. You know, we had some things that went up over 500%, you know, fittings that used to cost $9 cost $30, like it's ridiculous.
Right, yeah.
So, you know, that's all part of it. But that goes for everyone, you know, the well driller, the electricians, the, you know, plumbers, all of it.
And the reason for wanting to increase the town rebate portion is because ours are for voluntary installations only.
Right.
So we want to encourage more voluntary installations.
Good
So
point.
it's not covering the mandated ones when someone
Right.
adds bedroom count or
Right.
does a greater than 50% renovation, things like that. So that was it for WQI, and then we rolled straight from WQI into community housing. To figure out why WQI and community housing board got scheduled on the same evening, one at 6 and one at 7:30. There was a long evening.
I had it last night. I had 5 and a 7:30.
Yeah. They're not usually on the same night. But the timetable for the ADU Plus grant that we're getting through the, what is it?
CDCLI.
Thank you. I'm like, which alphabet are we working with? The start date on that was March 20th is when the contracts were signed at, you know, to CDCLI. So we have a 2-year window. That's the $2 million, $125,000 per ADU. So we need to get moving on that soon. And so there's going to be a public information session at the library on April 22nd at 1 p.m. for builders. If you're interested in working with homeowners to renovate or build ADUs, and then at 3 p.m. for homeowners. So that's April 22nd at the library.
Nice.
And I think the expectation from CDCLI is that we have 4 people apply by September, so that we know that we're getting started. Homeowners don't pay for the construction, CDCLI pays the contractor. And in addition to the $125,000, there are low-interest loans available as well in case it costs more.
Amber, will we videotape those presentations at all to put them on Channel 22?
I think we should make arrangements for that.
Yeah, I honestly think because on a Saturday, you're not going to get a ton of people, especially if it's a nice day on a Saturday. But I think making it available on Channel 22 for those people that can't make it and want to, or thinking about it, and run it once a week or something, you know, and just give it a given time and throughout the year.
Yeah, that's fast approaching, so we've got, 11 days? We should get that.
Can we do it here?
I think it was set up for it.
Yeah, let's reach out to Liz and Gwen O'Shea and see.
I mean, the library, I think, has done Zoom before.
Oh, yeah, they do the
Other
Friday night dialogues.
Friday night dialogues via Zoom, so they might be able to record it that way.
Yeah, whatever's
Yeah, well,
the best, but I think we
Because they already have it coordinated with the library.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's funny, a couple of people that are coming to my mind who would, you know, maybe qualify and be good in this program are people who are in the trade. I wonder how that would work.
well, that's why there's a section for builders.
Yeah,
And then 2 hours later.
but you know, their own homes.
Right.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting.
And then the other thing is at some point in the next, I don't know how many weeks, the Community Housing Board wants to come to the town board to discuss allowing ADUs in the near shore overlay district, because they're currently prohibited. However, you could have an accessory
Sleeping quarters.
that you could Airbnb. So
Right.
we're allowing one thing, but not housing, but you wanted to.
And that's mostly to have a community housing license for ADUs in the near shore. So not just blanket allowing ADUs in the near shore, but specifically for a community housing license, I think is how it was.
Yes.
The context.
Yeah.
So then it's regulated has to be year round and it's rent controlled, kind of that concept.
Right, right. And off a registry, it has to be.
Right.
Person off a registry, okay.
And then lastly, I've been sitting in on the Justice Court clerk interviews. We've interviewed 4 people out of the 6 applicants, all off of the civil service list. So tomorrow and Friday, we have the last 2 interviews. We do have some good candidates, so we will, I think, be able to hire off the list. We've got interested candidates, so I think that we will be able to appoint somebody. The question is we've structured it such that it's the 2 justices and myself doing the interviews. I feel like the justices, that they know the questions to ask, they know exactly what they're looking for. Do we need to come to town board and have us do second interviews, or I can just report back, the
I would like to
findings?
say, we don't need to, we'll take their recommendation.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's how it
Yeah,
should go down.
I agree.
yeah.
So hopefully by the end of the week, we will have decided on a candidate, and then next week can start to, make an offer, see if it's accepted, so that hopefully by maybe close to May 1st, we can get that position restaffed again.
Good.
So that's all that I have.
Good. BJ?
This morning was Taylor's Island. And one interesting question, 2 questions came up. Well, actually, before the meeting was just this is the time where they just kind of just say what got done, what needs to get done, and all of that, and get ready for the season, all of that. But they want to hang, an artist has offered, and they want to hang her work in the cabin, just for the summer, just not a sale, it's just a spruce, makes the cabin look pretty, whatever. So there's all kinds of insurance questions now.
Usually locked though.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
But it
So
can be
what would be
the
the point of
cabin.
hanging?
No, but a lot of people go to stay.
Oh.
It's a fundraiser, or, they hold a wedding or 2 out there, people will stay.
Yeah.
So, so insurance questions, I've been tasked to kind of get that settled. And then the other thing is, we're having a little difficulty in Shelter Island Heights Post Office. They are charging renters for their boxes. And it's tough. It's really tough. I asked him, I said, so we're going to do Shelter Island town-owned property. We'll have 2 units on it. How are you going to deal with that? He's like, that might take a sit down, between the town government and the post office. I said, but
But if you didn't have home delivery, they have.
that's what I said. I said, what is a renter supposed to do? Well, it's only 1 box per parcel. So they went after, I know that's too strong a term, Taylor's Island, because they don't really have a street address because they're an island. And it was difficult to prove that they had a parcel and they should have a post office box. So actually Taylor's Island does have a parcel on the Mashomic side. And so Judith provided the proof necessary that this is the foundation as well. The postmaster said, that's all right for this year, but you better figure something out for next year. Which I don't understand. I mean, that's sort of, what, doesn't matter that it's called Taylor's Island, but they own this other parcel, and that's what they're going to use to declare that they have a right to a free post
I
office
guess we need
box.
to get in touch with our congressman.
I think we do, because this is,
It's much bigger than Taylor's Island.
it is. No, and there are people complaining about it left, right, and center. It's affecting a lot of people. I mean, Louis.
So do we know, is it, I thought it was a law that if you didn't.
When I read it, I thought it was, Stephen will have to read it. When I read it, I thought it was muddy,
I think it's more of a policy.
Yeah. And then-
law per se.
Now they're telling people that they were audited in the Heights, and the audit came back and said that they must.
The other thing you can do, end it real quick, is have everybody do general delivery. And then
Yeah,
you get your mail every day.
yeah.
I've always been told as a renter, and in all of my moves, sometimes if the homeowner did not have a post office box attached to the property,
Yes.
then I got my post office box free.
Yeah.
But then if I was living someplace where the homeowner had the post office box attached, then I had to pay the fee.
Yeah.
So, and that's how it was explained to me.
Yeah,
Just
one
post
per
office
parcel.
Per parcel.
But that seems still to me unfair. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, and, what scam are they preventing? Or is this just a fundraising opportunity? So I live here and I don't know, it's just, and the other way you could do it is have 3 people going to one post office box, so you have to make all the boxes bigger. You can take your tenant, so.
So did they send notice out to everybody?
It's when you go to renew. So I just renewed mine and I had to bring in, took me 3 trips. Anyway, I had to bring in a tax bill, but I have a trust, so there was that problem. And then a driver's license to prove that I am who I am.
I made a mistake when I went to the DMV and my address on my driver's license is my post office box. I'm trying to fix that for a while.
Yeah, so that's it from Taylor's Island.
Any other committees?
Oh, no, I chimed in already.
Okay. Stephen, you have anything?
No.
Amber, you have anything? Anybody in the audience have anything? Anybody in the Zoom audience have anything?
Bob, if you would state this.
I did.
Don't forget, we
We
can,
have the special,
Okay, we're gonna close the work session and make a resolution to have a special meeting.
second on closing.
Second.
Do I have a motion to go into a special meeting?
Make that motion.
Second?
Second.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, special meeting. Be it resolved that 2023 general claims numbered 390 through 534, in the amount of $76,919.17. 2023 highway claims numbered 44 through 60, in the amount of $67,803.62. 2023 community preservation fund claims number 4, in the amount of $153.89. I hereby approve a payment as audited. The supervisor and/or town board member is hereby authorized and directed to sign the approved payment of same. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Whereas the term of Kathleen Gooding of Taylor's Island Committee expired on February 2nd, 2023. Now therefore be it resolved that Kathleen Gooding is hereby reappointed to serve as a member of the Taylor's Island Committee for a term to expire on February 2nd, 2026. So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Make a motion, we close this special meeting, go into an executive session to discuss the employment history of an employer.
So moved.